All right. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, this time we're at my place, which is even cooler. Yeah, come down and visit. It's really nice.
So the country mouse has headed to the suburbs, although we've just gotten off a great weekend of,
A lot of work. I learned how to garden. I don't like
yes,
gardening, but that's another series maybe we can talk about.
yeah. But
I'm not a fan, but I did a lot of work. Yes.
I did work her hard.
Mine was asking where the whip was, actually.
Oh, all right. Well, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Teresa, and
I'm Tammy.
we are, of course, sisters, and we're close in age and living close together for the first time in several decades. And so we thought we would,
Some fun.
let's have some fun with our conversations and just
Yeah.
kind of continue to journey together.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because it's nice to be close together again in the same space. And I know when I moved closer, I was like, it's time to rebuild this sisterhood, this friendship and relationships that you lose over time, over 30 years of being in separate spots. So it's very cool. And we're very blessed to be able to do this. So, yeah.
And our kids are grown. And so it's a good opportunity as well to kind of
for
focus
sure.
a little bit more
Absolutely.
on our personal journey, which is coming back together again.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, today we actually want to do the first of what may become a series of some favorite books and talking about what our favorite books are. So for the first one, I've asked to pick one of my favorite books. And so the book we're going to talk about is The On Purpose Person. And this is a book by Kevin McCarthy, and it's more than a quick read. It's a journey.
You better have your journal when you're reading this book. Like, I started to read it at first, and then I was like, I need an entire, just a journal specifically for On Purpose, because I've been saying it for years. When I was with my business, I would be like, I am creating this life on purpose. I've got this great post that says, live your life on purpose, and I never really understood until I was reading it. And I was like, ooh, I mean, it was good to know that I'm doing it right, sort of.
Yeah, and it's more than just we've also in fact talked in our podcasts a little bit about how having purpose was one of our key values for both of us, was having purpose in our life. So I was first introduced to the On Purpose Person in, I would say, the late 90s, 2000, like 98, 99, 2000. And I was looking for, and I forget even how it came to me, probably as a new manager of people. And I was looking for various books that would help me in my role as a manager to support my staff. And incidentally, there is also an On Purpose Person for the business owner and for a manager. So there is a series now from Kevin on the On Purpose Person. So, the first thing I will say is it is a quick read.
You absolutely. I would say, almost like read it through.
That's how they suggest it.
Come back with your journal. I didn't do it that way. But it was still less than a week getting through it because I was so excited to kind of move to that next space. So honestly,
I've literally given it to people who are traveling, and I've said, you've got a 2-hour layover in the airport in Toronto. Take this book with you, and for those 2 hours, don't go on your phone, read this book. And it is such a quick read, and it takes you're following the journey of a man who is at a point in his life where he's facing some decisions in his career, in his home. He's feeling like he's kind of just on the peripheral of his life and not living his life.
Almost like that. I don't like the term midlife crisis, but when you've been in a space and you have lived your life the way you think that you're supposed to be living it, right? We've got that where to go. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you've taken your head either out of the clouds or you've lifted up because your nose is to the grindstone the whole time. And you've looked up and you went, wait a second,
Is this
where
where I
am
want to
I?
be?
I don't want to be here. Why am I
Right.
here? And so when you're in that place and then you start to actually see all the things around you that aren't the way you perceived them to be or you made them out to be for yourself to make it okay to keep your nose to the grind.
Right. So if you
It's a
find
reset. It's a reset.
it
It's a
is.
reset.
So if you find that you are mechanically going through life, right? You're checking the boxes of what is expected of you or what you're expected to be doing or what the next step is supposed to be, whether that's you set that, a parent set that, a spouse set that, somebody else set, a boss set that,
All of
whoever
those
it was,
together, actually. Yep.
whoever has been influencing your life. If you're at that point where you feel like you're mechanically going through life, but you're not quite sure, is this where I'm supposed to be? Or if you're facing those junction points in your life, if you're facing a big decision,
Hmm. Hmm.
then, or if you're at the beginning of chasing a career, like just graduating university. In my case, it was as a new manager I mentioned, but also, young boys at home. My spouse, my partner was finishing his career. So lots of potential change there. So highly encouraging. So let's talk a little bit about the book. And yes, they do recommend uh, read the book first, resist the instinct that we both failed at, which was grab a pen and paper, read the book, then go back and reread it, which I didn't do. And clearly you didn't do either.
No, I couldn't. I mean, right away, it just everything comes to you so much that I found it really hard to continue to read the
Yeah.
book without writing things down.
Yeah.
So I actually had to follow through the step process. As he went and he met
Yeah.
the person along the On Purpose journey. I had to follow that process, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm gonna do my tournament. I'm gonna
Yeah.
run the gauntlet. Uh, and then too, going back and looking at it and thinking, well, why was my perspective so in line in this way when I'm sure I could be a little more freer if I actually took another read.
Yeah.
And I took the time to just go through and just take the time. I would set a timer, 5 minutes, right where you can in 5 minutes. And if I took a day at each space, I'm sure I would come up with a lot more detail. For sure.
So this
Without
book,
giving it away, guys. I'm not giving it away.
but we will talk a little bit about it because
Yeah,
I was
for
still
sure.
being a little mysterious. So, so the other thing I want to say is that this book does not have a gender and it doesn't have an age. And when you talk about rewriting, I have maybe not read the book each time, but I have gone through the process at least 7 times now since that first time in 2002, let's say.
Right. And this is the first time I've read this book, but it's not the first time I've looked at, specifically the areas of
List making and
the accounts, right? Our personal accounts. We all have these accounts of time, right? So when he's talking about, and I remember going through that with the social worker years back, and he's like, okay, so here's your accounts. And, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's their importance in your life?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so I had familiarity with this process. It just wasn't laid out this way. And I, had I read that, probably in 2014, maybe things would be in a different space than they are right now, but it doesn't matter. This is when it was supposed to come into my life. So it's okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. So the book essentially, like Tammy mentioned, will follow the journey of a gentleman in this point, and he is directed to meet different people who are themselves leading a life that is on purpose. In other words, the things that they're doing, the choices they're making whether it's everyday choices, whether it's large choices, they are stopping to think and say, am I being on purpose?
That's right. Is that going towards an alignment of what my purpose in life is?
At this moment.
Right. And you're always going to shift that. Like,
Absolutely.
everything does influence what we
Yeah.
do, whether we like it or not. We are influenced by what's around us, and we are conditioned by so many things in our life.
Right.
Our jobs, our people, especially our jobs.
Yeah.
Like, we are conditioned to think in this way, and this is the only way. And then something might happen in your life and you're going to like throw off.
Right.
So, having this, there's still though, in that, there's a core that's true to who you are. That's what we call when you're in alignment with yourself.
Right.
That's your purpose.
So as you do the journey, as you read the book, and again, we highly recommend it, whether it's, on Audible or literally picking up the book, it's a very quick read. And so as you go through and you've read the journey, you then go through it again. And it takes you through a process of, Tammy talked about accounts, which is, you have an account for what is it you want to achieve? What's important to you in recreational, physical, and health? What's important to you in emotional, mental health, and intellectual? What's important to you in your community and relationships? What's important to you? So it gives you accounts, 5 or 6 accounts, and it takes you through a process of just emptying your brain on everything that is important to you at this particular moment in each of those accounts.
Right. Each of those spaces. So,
right.
Right. What are your financial and material goals? Right.
Yeah.
So how much do you want to make? Where do you want to live? What does your house look like? What kind of car do you want to
Being specific.
And absolutely, like, I love being specific. This is something that I've really worked on anyway in the last little bit, but, we have to talk about that, our spiritual side, our emotional side, in our personal life. Like, for us, do you want something new that you want to change within you? Family, friends,
Yeah.
relationships,
community.
What, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So after you've gone through the process, and after we've gone through the process of writing down everything that we could think of specifically in that, career, vocation, in the financial material, whatever it is, each of those accounts, it then takes you through, a tournament. So think of, the round robin hockey tournament where you start with 15 teams, they each play each other, the winner moves on. And then the winners of the next series play each other, and then they move on. And you eventually ended up with just one in each of those accounts. And so that is the tournament. And so it does the same thing. It has you prioritize this one or this one within each of those accounts, right? And eventually you end up with your single most important element in each of those accounts.
That's right. And I think that's really cool because, as people will go through, or as you go through, you have to really think about what's important. And you have to think about, like, not just what's important, but what am I willing to give up
Yes.
to have this?
Right.
Because sometimes, a decision is a decision, whether you do or you don't, it's still a decision. And so whether you choose it or you don't choose it, there's sometimes that, oh, I got to give that up. So that fear of missing out, or that fear of giving up to choose.
Yeah.
But, sometimes, and I guess for me, what I found was that as you go through that one thing, if you have that one thing as your focus,
your willingness,
all of those, would fall into place and happen anyway.
Right.
In a way, maybe not all of them.
Yeah. And so I think many of us will do that, or, as we mature with our finances and financial planning and material, we tend to think, okay, we really want X and it's going to cost this amount of money. What is it we're willing to defer to make that happen? Right. So we do that. most of us as we mature through life with our finances, but we don't necessarily apply it to all aspects of our life. And this book is really talking about the fact that we only have 24 hours in a day,
Yeah.
right?
Time bank. That's right. The time bank. Wow.
So ideally, you're right. It may not be what are we giving up as much as what are we privileging? What are we going to privilege? Because what is most on purpose for us? What is the North Star?
Right.
What is
Where
that
are we
piece
spending our time?
we want
Because
to aim
that's right.
towards?
Yeah, right. Because your time is valuable, right? And where we spend our time is where we move forward, which is being on purpose.
Right.
And I mean, we learned that. I'm going to just put this out there. I mean, we learned that a long time ago when we were with Amway, right? Like,
Yes.
if you wanted this, there's delayed gratification. There's things you need to give up. And just until recently, I didn't watch TV
Mhm.
because it's a brain sucker.
Right.
Right. It took away from the goals that I had. If I was mindlessly scrolling or watching TV, it doesn't mean that I didn't do that. But if I know that I'm going to get into that, it becomes that addiction. And so if I'm just doing that, and then you wake up, you look up and you're like, okay, so now I've been here for 2 hours and I didn't get anything done that I wanted to do tonight.
Right.
And so, okay, time watching TV might be one of those things on the list that you want to do. But
Or if you're on purpose, depending on where you are in your life, if you're on purpose is I need to provide a little more balance in my life.
which is what I do now.
And I need to not be filling every moment with things to do, right? So instead of saying, what are we going to do today? Maybe occasionally saying, do we need to do anything?
That's right.
Why do we need to do
Anything. That's right.
right? And so it just depends on where you are at that particular time, right? So it takes you through the process. It does then end up with not only the tournament to end up what is your single on purpose, and I'll give an example from my past as well on this. But then also it kind of allows you to summarize. What are some summary statements that you've if you had to summarize what you're on purpose, what it means for you to be on purpose in each of those areas. And then it also talks about the time bank, right? If you had to break down an ideal 24-hour day, how many hours with your on purpose in mind, knowing that's where I really want to be, how would you break down that ideal day?
Right. How do you put all of those accounts into your day?
Yeah.
Like how does it fit in? How does everything fit into your day?
Right.
And it might sound exhausting, but it actually, I can't remember if it was in this book or if it was somewhere else where it talks about like, multitasking and you can't multitask. The brain does not multitask. It just doesn't. And if you multitask, you're exhausted. But, laying it out and understanding, you're going to have, a couple of hours that, every day you're going to take 20 minutes and take a look at your finances and just check to make sure you're getting to where you want to go in your savings account or whatever. And it retrains you to work towards your purpose. And so setting it into your time of your day.
And then it also has you at the end providing some generalized statements, right? I exist to serve by, right? So
That's your mission statement. Yeah, writing out your purpose, writing out what's your purpose.
Yeah.
Why, and again, taking the time to just write what that makes sense to you. Because everybody's different. Setting your purpose, setting your values, looking at your core values, your mission. And I mean, so many people have written mission statements. How many people write mission statements or vision statements for themselves, especially if they're in a business? I was doing that all the time with my business. I would write out a mission statement, and when I was with Epicure, I teach people how to make easy meals. Why? I provide solutions to moms. There's a purpose. There's a reason behind that. And so having that statement. But I like that he brings it down to like just a couple of words.
Yeah.
For your purpose.
Yeah.
And
something that allows you to use it practically. So I'll give an example of how I've practically used the on-purpose person experience myself. And like I said, I've done it many times. The first time I did it was in the I'll say early 2000s, 2002. I've done it as couples, right? So
Okay.
my spouse and I have done our on purpose person, and we typically will do it about every year or a year and a half, 2 years even,
Fun.
because things change. Maybe, we were going to travel with our RV full time, and then, the world changes, and we're like, okay, maybe we've got a different purpose. Maybe our purpose is to enjoy our homestead, and maybe our purpose. So whenever we feel like we're facing some decisions and trying to make decisions, we say, okay, it's time to redo our on purpose and just check in. Has any of our purpose changed?
Sure.
So let me give you the example of how being on purpose made it easy for me going through a life change. So we were living in Hamilton, and my boys were quite small at the time. So they were, I would say 6 and 8. And we were faced with, in my career, I was finally, as a military spouse, we were finally in one spot for long enough that I'm finally moving up in my career instead of moving sideways. Because when you're a military spouse, you're moving every couple of years. So there's always lateral moves, right? Lots of breadth of experience, but you don't get the chance to climb the ladder, so to say.
Yeah.
So I was climbing the ladder, finally moving up in my career, and we were faced with another move. Do we move from the city of Hamilton to a military base in the Ottawa Valley in Petawawa? Now, I remember my self-talk saying, okay, my career is finally moving. My spouse's career is coming to an end. Maybe it's time for my career. Maybe we should just stay and allow my career to progress. But I had to look. I had just done myself the on-purpose person not that long ago. And my number one that came from all of those tournaments was the health and welfare of my children. And so at that time, we lived in a downtown urban center. The boys, weren't able to get out and walk the neighborhood. They couldn't learn how to ride their bicycle. We'd have to put the bike in the car, go to a local park, teach them. The youngest didn't even know how to ride a bicycle yet because I couldn't just go out on the street and the neighborhood and teach him how, right? Yeah. They wanted to be outdoors. They were boys and they just wanted to be in the outdoors. So I thought, okay, hold on. And in fact, we had already had the opportunity to go to Petawawa, and I said no because we wanted to put my career first. Son said his. Here's a second opportunity 2 years later to go to the same location. I thought, okay, maybe I need to think about this. And at the time, the on-purpose person was health and welfare of my kids. So was the move from a downtown core location to the Ottawa Valley where they could be in the outdoors, ride their bicycles, lots of trees, you know, get out fishing, living in a more rural setting. Was it on purpose? Absolutely. Because my purpose at the time was not my career. When I did my tournament, my career, progressing my career was not the top. Mm. So that's how I have used that on purpose person in that example. And I've used it many times since then with different decisions, which is why we do it all over and over as required. So,
yeah. And for me, going through and being where I'm at now, again, just coming out of a transition, out of yet another move into a new place where, I don't know what's going on, a lot of shift in business and a lot of shift in things. And so going through the process, expanding and looking at different business opportunities, I really wanted to just make sure that whatever I'm doing was in line with where I'm at. And for me, it's really about, and I love this term. I was using it today when I was talking to somebody about, our briefings and stuff at work. And I said, it's about radical acceptance. So for me, that's like radically accepting everything that's coming into my life, radically accepting who I am, the challenges I've had, what might be coming down the road, what the opportunities are, but then also all the people that come into my life and just recognizing who they are and where they are and how they are, and just accepting that
Mm-hmm.
and accepting who they are, because it's not our space to change people. Um, and I love to empower, but that's done by inspiration. That's
Right.
not done by me doing it. So it's really a kind of a neat way that one of those in through when I wrote out my purpose, it truly just kind of sinks in as like, oh yeah, you do. This is how you are with people. You just accept.
Good.
And so it's really cool.
So, and since then, I mean, I know I've had, my boys have done it. I've had lots of friends do the on purpose person, and so we would definitely. Would you recommend it? So now I've recommended it to you, and you've gone through the
No,
process.
absolutely. There's always books, and I actually recommended this to the girls that I did the workshops with, and said like you've got to read this book. It's a great one, and yeah, that one,
Perfect.
and it will keep you working. And maybe the next one you need to read is called Eat That Frog.
Okay.
That's a fun.
So
But
the
anyway,
the on purpose person, if you do Google it or look it up, whether it's on an Audible, it's a quick read. Um, there are, you can even go online and download the sheets if you don't want to use a journal. Like I said, there is the on purpose leader. There's a few spin-offs that Kevin McCarthy has done related to being on purpose. And so I guess our challenge is, if that sounds like something that might interest you, uh, dip into it and see how you can be on purpose.
yeah, I've sent that one to all of the bosses at work
Yeah.
to say, hey guys, this is a great one for you guys to read, and we'll do a little chat over coffee about it.
I've even included it on a resume, and I had one person in my career that when they got my resume and saw that I was I literally put that I was an on purpose person, and I kind of hid it in there like in
Yeah.
the introduction, right? And somebody picked up on, like, hey, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not that you like to have purpose, but that you are on purpose. So
I love living on purpose. Perfect
perfect.
choice. It's
Great.
very great. Have a great night, everyone.
Talk to you later. Bye bye.
Bye.